Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and I hope I can be heard. Let me know, Joe or Michael, because I had a little mishap with the mute. So if for any reason I'm not being heard, let me know, okay?
You're perfect.
Oh, hey, well, maybe essentially. Okay, thank you. All right, well, good morning, and here from the Temple of Silence. And we have a new chart that Tuija has been working on here. Maybe this is version 1. We're working on it together. It's not a diagram particularly of the planes per se, but we recall that we were studying a six-fold, let's see, where are we here? A six-fold progression in which there were at least 18 triangles. And if for some reason we consider the three columns together as a triangle, then we would have 19. And maybe there's other ways to count as well, but it shows the, it shows the descent from cosmic sources of the Great Bear, Sirius, and Pleiades. And we have them here diagrammed more well, accurately, as well, I suppose, visually and interestingly. And the Great Bear, Sirius, and the Pleiades are on top, and the three colors are about right. Red for the first ray, and indigo for the second, and green for the third. And then they descend in the manner that have been given, and we're going to be reading some material from the old commentary from which DK made the simplification for us. So there are 6 steps, and we give kind of a 7th, you might say, a total embodiment within the physical form, not the etheric form. So there is a descent here from the Great Bear through Leo, through Saturn, through Shambhala, and then to the head center and base of the spine, and then showing up finally in the physical body. Then the love-wisdom descent is involved with Sirius, or maybe the little bear. It's hard to say because Sirius is oftentimes a blind for the little bear. Then passing through that very strongly second-ray sign, Pisces. Then Uranus, which strangely is there. It does rule the beating of the heart, but otherwise does not seem to be having any of the soft line rays in its makeup. And then the hierarchy, and then we're going to have the heart and the solar plexus next, as are here diagrammed. And then finally, the human descent through active intelligence. The Pleiades is so much more than simply active intelligence. The Pleiades is the sort of one about whom not may be said, in whom we are all living and moving and having our being. And what I didn't mention last time, well, Capricorn fits very well because it's a sign of great intelligence, like a constellation. And when you look in the sky, it is the triangle. There's no question about it. So is Libra, interestingly enough. So a great big triangle is there, indicating the third ray. The green is the right color. Now, Mercury is particularly the planet of humanity, and that's what I did not mention. Mercury rules the creative hierarchy, which is found on the Buddhic plane. It is the human creative hierarchy, and there it is found with Scorpio, which is humanity's sign. Interesting that Capricorn and Scorpio are the two signs or constellational energies which are particularly admitting a human being into the hierarchy, and they are very tough signs. So it gives you an indication of all the kinds of tests through which we have to pass to become a member of the hierarchy. So Mercury is our planet, and Venus is more the planet of the angels. And you put them together and you get that combination of angel man, which is beginning to form on the Buddhic plane. So next comes humanity, and then we have the, I think it looks like here, the Ajna Center and the sacral center, or is it, or throat center? Maybe it's Ajna and throat. I have to check on that. I think so. Planetary Ajna, yeah, Ajna and throat center. And those are the two centers which are particularly connected with active intelligence. The sacral center is oftentimes left out of it all because it's a temporary evocation, although most necessary to produce a physical vehicle. So all of this shows up finally in the dense physical form, all the way from the cosmic sources right down here into this kind of a congestion of matter that we call the dense physical form. So we'll be referring to this, and the basic descent is red, indigo, and green. And if we can get the energies flowing with respect to these particular triangles, well, then we become the completed human being. I just want to quickly welcome you all by first name at first, and Alex, Anne, Anna, Annette, and Antoinette, Barbara, Catherine, Frederick, John, he seems to be there or offline, I'm not sure. Karen, Catherine, Carrie, Leslie, Lourdes, Marianne, Martha, and Natnia. She seems to be offline, but she's sort of with us. Yankee and Risto, and of course Tuija's here, and Winnie in Sweden. And then backing us up on our staff here is Joe Waltz and Michael Stacy, giving me a hand when I get into trouble, which is electronically fairly often. Okay, so let's just have I know I plunged right into that, but let's just have a very brief little alignment. All of us are gathered here to study this profoundly subjective science which can recondition all of our relations, not only on the physical plane, but in the entire personal sphere, which is the lower 18 subplanes, and in a way is so out of order due to the condition of illusion, glamour, and Maya. So basically, we're part of an effort here to help archetypalize relations within the personal spheres, within the dense physical body of the planetary logos, the lower 18 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, and eventually the lower 21 subplanes, which will include the causal body, but we'll just leave that to itself, as that is under the supervision very much of the solar angel, or angel of the presence, and we really have nothing to say with how that is arranged except to do our best below. So we're, with the help of Master DK, we're penetrating into these deeply occult sciences and structures. And before long, maybe we'll know the causes of things and not just live bewildered in the world of effects. Okay. Now we have our method generally has been a little reading in this. Well, there's so much that we can read. There's a 100-page section here, roughly, in Esoteric Astrology. So it will also demand our knowledge to a degree of astrology and how the different factors are arranged triangularly as a support to the apparently simpler arrangement in our etheric body. And we'll be learning a couple of different things as we go along, and then scattered throughout the books, as DK is happy to tell us, is so much more information. And we're grateful to Starling David Hunter for having accumulated many compilations, which will give us some degree of focus on triangles, which we may not have covered in this particular 100 pages or so. So we have plenty of work to do. This is our 18th program, and it seems to be taking place every 2 weeks in the morning, and maybe there will be an adjustment on that, but we haven't been able to manage that quite yet. You know, we'll have this sort of full-time radio television station here going on all the time with occultism, and then, well, what do they say, that the more inwardly free you become, you know, a consummation devoutly to be hoped, the more inwardly free you become, the more outwardly bound you become. So if you find yourself with less and less discretionary time and more commitment to the teaching, it's meant to accompany your increasing inner freedom. You know, hopefully that is the case. Now that we will go on and just the things that are written in red maybe have to do with an earlier commentary that I made, a rather lengthy one of the entire book. You can find that on Makara at the moment, and we'll see what we can do as we go along to transfer some things to YouTube, which has a wider bandwidth, and so when we're playing music, it's much more suitable with many fewer breaks. Anyway, 2 sources, and on Makara at the moment, makara.us, you can find that book, Esoteric Astrology, commented on very thoroughly. Of course, I don't hold out for the complete accuracy of what I've said, but at least there are some suggestions which may help you think in a broader, wider, deeper terms. Okay. How many triangles are there in this setup that we have had? Well, it seems that 18 are easily discerned, and maybe 19 if we look at the 3 great columns together. So there are 6 in this way: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then if we start moving down, we will see 3 at a time. For instance, Great Bear Leo Saturn Shambhala, Saturn Shambhala head center, and then a head center. How does it go? I think there are 4 in each column, and then then Shambhala head center and the base of the spine. And thus we do for each one of the columns. So that's 12 plus 6 is 18, and then another perhaps a large triangle. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't find more triangles in here, but these are the obvious ones. And as DK is going to tell us, he really can't go over all the triangles. All he can do is deal with the ones that are most important to us. And I think we can be grateful for that somehow. Okay, here we go. So we're studying the tabulation. It's given to us in this way, and it's given to us in the straight text, and we go on, thinking together and hopefully arriving at something that will be an improvement in our understanding. A study of this tabulation will demonstrate that there will be found a structure therein of many triangles of force. Some of these are cosmic, which means, well, even in a way the zodiac is cosmic, but maybe he considers the Great Bear, Sirius, or Little Bear, and Pleiades truly cosmic. And yet, within the head center of the one about whom naught may be said, our local one about whom naught may be said, is found the entire zodiac of constellations. And if we look here at this presentation in Tuija's diagram, this is my estimation of what the one about whom naught may be said is, where it may be placed. It's a kind of a green triangle, and I don't know if it belongs in the very center in terms of these, I call these sub-parabrahmanic logoi. We don't even know what structures these are, but 7 one about whom naught may be said make up the chakra, major chakra system of these vast beings, and a still vaster being, and yet we're up here, and yet we're nowhere near the galaxy at all. So inside this little triangle are some of the great constellations, the Great Bear's in there, Little Bear, maybe part of the Pleiades, maybe Orion is there. I think, let's see, the dragon is there. It all depends on how we see the chakras of this vast, vast being, which is the Lord. I just call this being our particular super cosmic logos, not, more than a cosmic logos. And basically there are 49 of them that are being considered here, and 7 containers, and 1 that contains all of this. So in my view anyway, I'm waiting till I'm proven incorrect on this point, this is a vast map going all the way up to the cosmic logoic plane. And since we can't even really talk with any intelligence about our own spiritual triad and the monadic plane, you can imagine what a reach it is to think in these terms, and yet it's just the very, very beginning of even getting into our galaxy, of which there are billions in the present universe, which is one of numberless universes. So look, it's a big, endlessly big picture, and we are just microscopic man, tiny little beings, okay, but we are the whole thing at the same time. And somehow we have to learn how to contain those opposites of being so limited and yet so vast at the same time. Each one of us is. All right, going on. Have a little water handy here, just in case. So there are many triangles here. Some are cosmic, and I just went over that idea. Some are zodiacal, and as I said, the zodiac itself is in a way cosmic, because it's part of this great being we call our one about whom naught may be said. Others are systemic and have to do with the planetary life, the various planetary logoi and how they are related in many different kinds of triangles, not here discussed. Well, actually maybe systemic there's a kind of thing where you can relate solar logoi. I'm not sure they are in this particular diagram. And then planetary and their reflections in the etheric body of the disciples of the worlds in all grades. So basically, we students of occultism, we would-be disciples, are reflecting in our tiny little etheric body, which is part of the vast etheric body of all space, all kinds of superior triangles that we cannot even touch or reach. We can maybe vaguely conceptualize them, but they are all reflected right here in our bioelectric field. Okay, through the great triangle of Shambhala, the hierarchy and humanity, and I've shown you many times that the relationship past, relationship present, relationship future between these three great centers, which basically can be considered the head center, the heart center, and the throat, or the head, heart, and ajna center. It depends on how we consider humanity. Sometimes it's listed as a throat center in relation to the planet, and sometimes it is listed as an ajna center. Well, at least the higher parts of humanity are found in the ajna center. I even saw one diagram where there was a lot about the solar plexus in relation to humanity. But anyway, through the great triangle, which we can somewhat conceive, and in the relating of which we are involved, this great triangle, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, cosmic, zodiacal, and systemic force is focused. Now you can imagine how this goes. The cosmic part relates to Shambhala, the zodiacal part relates to hierarchy, and the planetary or systemic force relates to humanity. So, is focused, and these three become in their turn a macrocosmic triangle of energies in relation to the individual human being upon our planet. So our major concern is with these, okay? And our job as students of occultism is to find the way not only into hierarchy, but we have, as I've often said, a dual curriculum whereby the energies of the monad and the energies thus of Shambhala are also to be considered. Now, we can't use those words lightly because we hardly understanding what the great ashrams and Shambhala are, our understanding, of hierarchy, our understanding of Shambhala is far less, okay? But at least this is the big triangle that is reflected in everything that we have in our etheric body. So you have, therefore, the following lines of transmission of force, and this is quite simple when compared to what we have been studying. Now, you know, DK is spending quite a number of pages here dealing with this descent all the way from the Great Bear down to the base of the spine, all the way from Sirius of the Little Bear, all the way down to the solar plexus, and all the way from the Pleiades down to the throat center of Little Man. He's spending a lot of time here. So we judge these factors to be really important. All right, so, you know, it's obvious. Shambhala, head center, base of the spine. And of course, you know, that's one of the triangles we find here. Shambhala, head center, base of the spine. Okay, and then we can go through that with all the others as well. You know, hierarchy, heart center, solar plexus, and humanity, ajna center, and the throat center. Okay. Okay, now, you know, as we go along, just take notes and see what points of clarification may be required. I mean, I certainly, you know, this is heady stuff, and I can't say with certainty that I can do any kind of satisfactory clarification, but I can give it a good old college try. Okay, one major center is here omitted because it is primarily related to the physical body and its expression and life perpetuation. And let's just say, remember that the physical body is not a principle. In other words, it was developed earlier. Maybe in an earlier solar system, it might have been considered a principle, but we have transcended that now, and that which is archetypal to the physical body, namely the etheric body, that which is noumenal to the phenomenal physical body, is a principle, but not the physical body anymore. And thus it goes for our planetary logos with his lower 18 subplanes, his dense physical body, and thus it goes for our solar logos with his dense physical body consisting of the 21 lower subplanes, which includes, of course, the causal body, not a principle for the solar logos. In other words, it's there, it's supportive, you have to deal with it, but it's not under development. It's an effect at this point. So that is the sacral center, the physical body and life perpetuation, and maybe many other incidental psychological factors. Just as the physical body, as a matter of fact, when you think about it, when there was the division of the sexes in Lemurian times, the sacral center had to become important, or maybe had to be formed somehow. When you think of it, early man, pre-individualized, was not was a unitary being and had no need to develop through the relation of the sexes or through a sacral center. Now, we were in a state of hermaphroditism, the secret doctrine seems to tell us. Okay, and that condition of hermaphroditism is going to return, at least spiritually speaking, to the human race. Sometimes when we look at the planetary logos, the proper name for that logos is the divine hermaphrodite. So Hermes is Mercury, Aphrodite is Venus, hermaphrodite, and it's sort of a consummation of the relationship of the triangle. Here's another big one: Mercury, Venus, Earth. The two, Mercury and Venus, combine in such a way that they develop that combination within the logos of the Earth. And in this particular case, you can look at the aspects. The Mercury is the mind. Venus, in this case, is Kama Manus, or maybe the astral body, and the Earth is the etheric or physical. So that's the sacral center. Just as the physical body is regarded by true esotericists as not a principle, so the sacral center is regarded as, quote, a necessary evocation between that which is high and that which is low, and between that which is sounded forth from the center in the throat and that which replies to the deeply sounded note. So that could be the base of the spine center. The base of the spine center is most mysterious. Without it, you have no life, you have no support. It's basically, interestingly, connected with the etheric body, whereas the sacral center, which is above the base of the spine, at least anatomically, is connected with the dense physical. But this sacral center is also, and now please bear this in mind, the major center for those taking the fifth initiation. And that's why, Pluto, well, you can get it. I've sometimes thought, now think about this, how it seems to you that when dealing with the 7 major chakras, actually you have a triangle connected with each one of those chakras. And I may have mentioned this before, but when we deal with the base of the spine, for instance, we have the Earth. Well, first of all, we have Pluto. And Pluto is considered in the anatomy of the human being as the ruler of the base of the spine. But Earth is the true base of the spine in the solar system. And Mars rules Kundalini latent. So those three particularly are connected with the base of the spine. And then you have Mercury as well, which is the active Kundalini. So maybe is in a category all by itself. Oftentimes Mercury does so much running around that it seems to be in its own category. So anyway, one of those old commentary statements. Time for a little sip of water, please. Right, there we go. Unnecessary evocation between that which is high and that which is low, between that which is sounded forth from the center of the throat and that which replies to a deeply sounded note, and maybe a deeply sounded note is sounded in the base of the spine center, and the sacral center is replying or evoked from that deep sounding. Anyway, these are occult matters, and we'll know more later as we go along. The main thing for us is to transfer the energy from the lower triangles to the higher triangles, and thus become at first fully human, which we are not yet as long as we are subjected to Mars, which we overcome at the 3rd degree and become fully human, and then on to the superhuman states. So we're still wrestling with the animal. We want to become fully human under Venus at the 3rd initiation. And we want to become superhuman as we enter the realm of the spiritual triad. And all of that will involve a shifting to higher and higher triangles and energy and energizing of the higher triangles rather than a concentration upon the lower triangles. Okay, so in this connection, there is an interesting triangle. You know, I'm saying here, boy, this is an intricate study. Let's see what it is relevant to the human process at this time. Okay, now look at this one. And can we find out why it should be a triangle? Now, I've given some hints here and spelled it out. The egoic lotus, the throat center, and the sacral center. Why is this a triangle? Well, you know, the egoic lotus is pretty much a vehicle, a physical vehicle for everything that's going on in the spiritual triad. Now, there's lots of different ways to count the numeration in these different centers. But with the egoic lotus, look, we can count in this way and get the number 16. So there's one jewel in the lotus. There are the synthesis petals, the sacrifice petals, the love petals, and the knowledge petals. So that is, let's see, one jewel in the lotus, 12 petals, and 3 members of the atomic triangle. So if you count those all together, you get the number 16, and 1 and 6 equals 7. Okay, so 16 arises from that. I wonder if I can show in a diagram that will, you know, give us an idea, that a little bit better idea, that the number is 16. Okay, so in the egoic lotus, let's see, I have a feeling that I'm going to have to look this way. Okay, so inside the egoic lotus, there is the jewel in the lotus. There are the 3 synthesizing petals. There are the 3 sacrifice petals, the 3 love petals, the 3 knowledge petals. Now, so far, That's giving us the number 13. And now within, actually at the base of the lotus, and here it's displayed differently, but really within the lotus itself is found at the base of the lotus. Now, you know how to diagram that, I don't know. The mental unit, the astral permanent atom, and the physical permanent atom, and all that is within the egoic lotus structure, and that is 16, and the number is 7, the number of manifestation. 1 plus 6 is 7. Now that correlates exactly excuse me, with the 16 petals of the throat center. And we know as well the egoic lotus is always, from the egoic lotus, words affecting the personality are always being sounded. So it's kind of like a throat center on a higher plane. And once we get into the spiritual triad, then we get into more specifically the second and the first aspect. But the egoic lotus has a lot of the third aspect. Its number from this way of counting is a 7. The throat center has 16 petals, therefore its number is a 7. It has to do with manifestation. Now we come down to the sacral center, and of course when you have a 6 and a 9, you know, it has 6 petals, and spirit is at the bottom in this case, and form is at the top, or rather, yeah, exactly. But here, spirit is at the top and form is at the bottom, once we ascend to the 9. But we find a 7ness as well in the sacral center. First of all, it produces on the outer or 7th plane the physical body, okay? But then, no matter how we look at it, as DK presents it, Uranus is the ruler of the sacral center, and Uranus is, at this time, the major 7th ray planet. All of these are involved in the creation of forms, and that's why they are a triangle. The egoic lotus is involved in the creation of the entire personality. The sacral center is involved in the creation of dense physical bodies, and the throat center creates all kinds of thought forms, and believe it or not, he tells us about this in Esoteric Psychology 1. In the future, physical bodies will be created by the throat center. So maybe, you know, maybe music will be involved, maybe, you know, some type of interaction of different tones, et cetera, et cetera. Once we know enough occultism, the parents will come together and, I think, sing the new being, the new physical form into existence, or whatever form it may be. The throat center can create the form. Interesting, the number 32 will be produced, 16 plus 16, and it's just about the penultimate number, the 32 degrees of Masonry, and finally the ultimate degree, the 33rd. So you can see how each of these is on its own level a creative center, and thus the triangle is at work. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, basically, we must move from being the procreative into being the creative, which means that starting at the first initiation, energy is raised to the throat center and a person becomes creative in a higher way. But what energy will the throat center carry? It's more refined than the sacral center. You know, 6 and 16, kind of interesting. Put those two together, you get the sacred number 22, which is found always, you know, in 21 plus the entirety, which makes a 22. It's one of those special numbers in numerology: 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, and so forth. So this is the 22, the 6 and the 16. But are the petals in the egoic lotus, which each have their own highly refined and developed power, are they affecting the creativity of our throat center? Or is it just the lower mind that's at work? Now, for most people, it's just the lower mind. But if we can actually tune in the magical process, in the white magical process, and say, okay, this is what the soul in me, this is what the projection of the solar angel in me, plus the projection of my own monad, those two things mixed together, this is what it wants to create in line with the divine plan, then we have real spiritual creativity going on through the throat center. And that's what all of us as students of white magic have to accomplish. It's not just what we want, what our astral body wants, what our limited mind wants. We have to tune in on the presence of the soul, a higher center, a higher type of consciousness within our egoic lotus, and bring that down into the planning, creative, speculative, arranging throat center, all of it supported by the sacral center, which will help us make a dense physical presentation of the idea which started in the soul and maybe beyond. So I think you can see how these are related, this triangle related to each other. And let me say this, I think it's important. It's not just finding triangles that are related, or, you know, points that are related in the triangle. Okay, yeah, so what? What do they mean at any time in human history? And when, let's say, one of the vertices, one of the points of the triangle is paramount and foremost. What does this triangle mean? Why is it related? I'll give you an example. Here's a triangle, let's say, of Cancer, Leo, and Aquarius. He does talk about that kind of triangle, Cancer, Leo, and Aquarius. Okay. Cancer is mass consciousness. I mean, you know, obviously, any sign of the zodiac can be used for higher types of consciousness, but the generic meaning of Cancer for so many people is mass consciousness. Leo, although it has many higher meanings, is individual consciousness. And Aquarius, with its many, many higher meanings, is at least group consciousness. So you see the progression. That's why it's a triangle brought to our attention, from the mass to the emergent individual to the group. And therefore we see the progression. Now, I would venture to say that Aquarius is not yet the foremost, uppermost member of that triangle with regard to humanity. Now, maybe with regard to disciples, it is, okay. But with regard to humanity, I would suggest Leo is coming to the topmost position. Why would I say that? Because we have a bunch of people in this world so far, even some of those from the moon chain, who are not yet truly individuals. They are still much affected by the great currents of mass think, mass consciousness. But more and more, with all the problems that it may represent and all the advantages too, the individual is emerging in humanity. Leo, the most human of all the signs, says Master Decay. So it's Leo that is going to take people out of the mass and create, instead of a diffusion of light, a brilliant point of light which represents individuality in each case. And so, for average humanity, in that triangle, Leo, I say, will be the topmost point. But when we come to disciples and initiates who have developed their individuality, you apply the triangle differently. And Aquarius, which is group consciousness, universal consciousness, initiatory consciousness, as it can be highly interpreted, becomes the uppermost point. So you see, it's not only what's going on in the triangle itself, it's who is adapting its energies to their own purposes. And this is what determines the positioning of the different vertices of the triangle. Now, with respect to the Earth, I don't know. Maybe that's the way to consider it, because these are great zodiacal factors. And what do they mean in terms of the development of the whole planet? That's another matter, and involves different kingdoms of nature and so forth. But anyway, my point was this. Try to understand why it is that a triangle is a triangle, and what the purpose of the whole triangle may be. It's not enough for Master DK to say, here's a triangle, there's a triangle, this is a triangle. That. No, unless we can explain it in a way that really makes sense to us, then we just haven't grasped the foundation of that particular structure. Okay, now let's see. Here's another one. It's a reflection. The triangle, when functioning, produces a subsidiary triangle, because there are triangles that have an evocative force, and they can evoke lesser demonstrations of themselves. So then we have the throat center, the sacral center, and finally the physical body, symbolized by the organs of reproduction, gonads and ovaries. And these two types of centers produce the physical body, one now and one later in planetary history. Right now it's the sacral center, and as DK has hinted, the throat center is going to be a very interesting materializing center. Now, at a certain point, the seventh ray, not the third ray, but the seventh ray really comes into working on the throat center. And then when that happens, the true magician can begin to appear. And from the words of the throat center, magical words, let us say, materializations on the dense physical plane can occur. So you see there's a reflection here. In this particular case, the throat center is reflecting the egoic lotus, the sacral center is reflecting the throat center, and the physical body is reflecting the sacral center. Okay, and I explained this other thing before. We're not yet at that point in planetary history when the throat center can assume its full role. Well, you know, okay, I've gone on and on here a bit. We're going to get into the eyes now, but I think that we should wait, because it's a whole unit in itself to study the different eyes, EYES, in the human being. I'll just read a little bit of this particular paragraph, but I have the feeling that we should have our little discussion, and then Tuija will be giving us a abbreviated triangles meditation, as it seems a shame when talking about triangles not to somehow engage in the subject just a bit. Okay. So DK says, let me pause a moment here to point out that in this study of the triangles, and this is the point, it is not possible for us to do more than study certain of the major groups of triangles and a few of the important triangles where humanity itself is concerned. So right away, he limits the subject. You can understand, this is a subject of incredible intricacy. Not only are we dealing with all kinds of sources of energy, which are planetary, solar systemic, local cosmic, far out cosmic, whatever, but we're dealing with the interrelations of all of them. And that adds a level of complexity beyond which the human mind can travel in its present condition. It is of value for human beings to realize that there are other evolutions. We sometimes get very anthropocentric, wouldn't you say? We forget the Deva evolutions. We forget the other kingdoms. We're all important, right? Okay. It is of value for human beings to realize that there are other evolutions and other forms of logoic expression, I suppose the solar logos, of equal importance to their own. There is, in truth, a veritable multiplicity of triangles. Now, I'm sure that you and I already have that notion and realize that it is reasonably said, but the more we study, the more we're going to articulate and see with specificity the huge number of triangles which exist, and we're going to try to isolate the ones which are most important for humanity and for all of us and for disciples and initiates particularly. For the triangle is the basic geometric form of all manifestation. And remember that on the atmic plane, we have Libra as the ruler of the creative hierarchy called the triple flowers on the atmic plane. And if you look at Libra, its form also is a triangle. Of the three of the three signs which convey to us the third ray, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, all of them have a triangular formation within them. Every one of them, Capricorn is obviously triangular, Libra is obviously triangular, and though there's more to the shape and structure of Cancer, it does contain a very prominent triangle. So the triangle is the basic geometric form for all manifestation, and it is to be seen by those who have eyes to see. May we number ourselves among those before long. Underlying the entire fabric of manifestation, whether it is the manifestation of a solar system, the manifestation of a zodiacal round, which I assume is a great Platonic year, well, or maybe it's even more. One possibility of a zodiacal round in relation to our planet is simply the progression or regression of the equinoxes, equinoctial axis through the entire zodiac. And that's about, roughly 25,000 years, or if we start to use figures given closer to 26,000. So anyway, it's seen underlying the fabric of manifestation, a solar system, a zodiacal round, the cosmic triplicities of which we've just studied, Great Bear, Sirius, and Pleiades, or the tiny reflection of this divine triple whole, which we call man. Now, certainly, this is putting us in our place. This, we are microscopic man, and if you think about it, when you look at the planet, you don't even see these little ants called man moving around. You just don't see it from a certain distance. When the human being is manifest, but is not yet truly manifested, the triangles which symbolize this manifestation are the two eyes and the third eye. And that's what we're going to get into next time. Because I just think that, it's just too much right now if we were to add the discussion of the eyes to what we have already discussed. So now, Tuija and I, we're going to be traveling, but we'll let you know when that next meeting is. I think if it's 2 weeks away, maybe we'll be able to handle it. Okay, let's see. Excuse me. And here are the eyes. Okay, here are the eyes. All right. And I'll put this here. And this now, this is the end of number 18. and it's the 31st of August. We're going to start with number 19, and I don't even know what page we're on. Let's just see, page 429. Okay, so this is, right, 429. Right, and we'll be beginning, we haven't covered a lot of pages, but okay, we'll be beginning right here. And so far it looks like it will be taking place on the 7th, 8th, 14th of September. Okay, that'll be our next meeting of this particular group. As you can see, it is impossible to study the science of triangles in this kind of depth without bringing in a lot of occultism. Now, all of you are students of occultism, and it's all one big book anyway. So whatever we learn in relation to the science of triangles is all to the good. Meanwhile, the simple thing is, let's just make sure we have light, we have love, and the will to good. Let's just make sure we have those three developing in our manifestation and our relations. That's the simplicity of it, and that's what we have to develop. Okay, so let's, if there are questions about this or comments, this is the time. And let's just see, right, I mean, Tuija's saying, okay, we have a draft here. Okay, she's done a great job, but we're going to work on the refinement of it. And hopefully, yeah, right, Anna, you know, sometimes, well, we were doing a broadcast last night and I couldn't get the computer off mute. So I didn't hear a thing for a long time and I couldn't broadcast the thing for a long time. So check your own setup, because Joe or Michael would have told me if I'm just doing a pantomime here, okay? As I have I've sometimes started, you know, with a pantomime. They tell me right away. So hopefully you're okay now. I hope so. Okay. All right. So your thoughts before we have our little triangle meditation. If you wish to speak or you wish to write a sort of put a question mark there and offer a question or offer a statement, this is the time to do it. I mean, you know, how long did Master DK study before he became as he is? Now go back to the days when his reputation is to have been Cleinias, the just Greek and the second in command at the Pythagorean Academy at Crotona in Asia Minor. So that was going to be 2,600 years ago, or 500 years ago, 2,500 years. And already at that time, he knew a lot. So where are we? It's going to take a tremendous amount of study, but many things have improved in terms of the delivery of information and the techniques by which one can assimilate information. So everything is speeding up, but we still have, I would say, many centuries to go before we can know with the kind of mind that presented to us the blue books. It'll be a while before we're a master of the wisdom. Anyway, we proceed.
Michael?
Yes, Michael.
Vera has her hand raised.
Thank you very much, Michael. Okay, so, and yeah, okay. Vera.
Yeah. Hello, Michael. I have a basic and naive question. Where does the matter come from? Does everything come from this unmanifested through the manifestation and then coming back into unmanifested?
Right. So the question is, where does matter come from? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that is a, well, you know, we have this invisible to us root matter that we call mula prakriti, right? However,
Yeah.
however, all things are one thing in the post and pre-universal worlds. In other words, there are times in absolute infinite duration when apparently there is no finite universe. And when that is the case, all things are one thing, and we can't even call it a thing. We can't, what do? It's absoluteness. It's the being than which there is no other, and contains within itself every possibility that exists, including matter. Now, look, my own theory about where matter comes from is that there comes forth a universal logos, always in a way the same logos and always different. It has a different assignment. It has a different assignment each time, or self-assigned assignment. It's a reflection of the absolute deity, which is a super universal being. It's an infinite being. It's super universal, but it goes forth into finiteness.
Yeah.
Okay, and it is spirit matter. Now, my view, and you know, I'm just holding for this until I figure out something better, is that a process of self-observation occurs within that emergent universal logos. In other words, it's a finite being in a way with infinite roots, but its manifestation as a cosmos is going to be finite. Okay, so
Yes.
when that being, which is rooted in the absolute deity and all that, when that being observes itself, because there's nothing else to observe, consciousness arises, and what can it see? It can only see itself. Matter is born. Matter as we know it. So I'm saying that Mula Prakriti is the self-observation of the universal logos each time it appears. I'm saying that matter is a state of consciousness of the universal logos. And each time it appears in its pure, unarticulated form, so that there's nothing in it except the root potential to create whatever is in the ideation of spirit. And then every time spirit projects into that self-observed state, whatever its assignment is, its algorithm, it's whatever, because there's infinite forms and it's only brought through some. And then it has to manifest them in finiteness. So matter is a state of self-observation, is my final conclusion, and it disappears along with the observer into absolute infinitude at the Mahapralaya, at the end of any universe. And that's been going on forever. So I don't know. I know it's a little philosophical and a little bit kind of, you know, out there, but maybe it makes a little sense in a psychological way. That's my definition. Matter to me is not forever, because the only thing that is forever is the one absoluteness, the one absolute being. And you don't have matter unless you have spirit, and you don't have matter unless spirit is observing itself. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's it.
did clarify, because I know you touched on that in the white magic, and I was sort of struggling with that. But now, after listening what you said, I feel I'm a little bit closer to how you see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. And just to let people know, what Vera may be referencing is that there are 85 programs now on white magic, and the most recent, they're all going to be found now, the most recent ones on YouTube. There are 35 programs. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but we're into the 30s somewhere. And they are on the rules for magic for the astral plane. And that's what I'm working on right now. And so if you want to tune in and go to, well, first of all, I would recommend going to Makara to catch the first 50 programs, Rules for Magic on the Mental Plane and the introduction of the book, and then to the white magic of the astral plane, which at this moment is appearing on YouTube. Now, whether it's on Makara or not, I don't know. Maybe Joe would be in a position to answer that for me. I'm not sure. Okay. Now, any other thoughts or questions on what we have been studying here? It's a progression of a descending progression of energies, which end up creating vortices in our etheric mechanism. And because of those vortices, the qualities of the higher triangles can enter our etheric mechanism in a very, very, very reduced, transformed, attenuated manner. And we can have heaven, the highest heavens, right here in the lowest earth, what for us is the lowest earth. So it's all coming together, and the higher is reflected in the lower, at least that. And in many ways, what is low, you can tell what is high by studying what is low. As above, so below. It's not exactly true to say as below, so above, but there are indications and it can help. Okay, other thoughts, other questions, other thoughts. And let me just say, don't be daunted by the material. The material is daunting, but our capacities to understand these things are constantly going to improve. And we're on our way towards the higher initiations eventually, and we will understand. So don't ever throw up your hands and say, oh my God, this is beyond me. If I did that, I would just stop studying right away, and I can't. I just must keep going, 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 in the hope, in the faith, in the conviction that what is known to the Tibetan now will be known to me later and to all of us, okay? So just be brave. All right, other thoughts or questions? And Michael and Joe, if I'm missing somebody, let me know.
I'm not seeing any hands raised or questions.
Okay. Right. Okay, well, it's very good to see all of you here. I'm just going to say this is a new language. And it's a well-delivered language, because Alice Bailey was so sharp with the English language. And together, as you know, DK, with his rather old English abilities, not speaking medieval English, because who can understand that, but at least the English of Elizabethan times, he blended that with Alice Bailey's modern English, and they came up with a form of English very suitable to the presentation of occultism. So we've got a very, very clear presentation, as much as words can carry, of these things going on the inner planes, where really we live. We're out here temporarily, kind of surrounded by reduced perceptions. But as we begin to drop the veils and go back into the inner worlds, then we begin to perceive free from the limitations of dense matter and of matter of the lower 18 subplanes, and we really begin to see. And then our job is to bring through our inner plane seeing, which already exists in a very high level, because we're already monads, and even now we are monads, bring it right down into the physical plane and transform the matter inherited from the previous solar system and from the moon chain. We're on a great redemptive mission that we call the monadic pilgrimage. It's an act of service. We are lords of ceaseless, persevering devotion, and we're down here trying to make a difference and end the suffering of lesser forms of life and end our own suffering while we're here as well. Okay, so next time we'll be getting into the eye. Now that's a vast subject. And there's all these eyes. And they all see different things, you know. So we all have multiple levels of perception because we have multiple sources of those perceptions. Now, what we want to learn how to do, our very next step, see when you see through the emotional body, things are really obscure. When you see through the mental body, okay, but there's a lot of illusion and everything is in pieces and not unified. Our next job is to see through the eyes of the soul. Now, you know, that's easily said. What do things look like if you're a soul? But that's a level of consciousness that most of us have not attained because we cannot at will center our consciousness within the causal body. And DK said this is the one big lack of students. He talks about this in one of his very first books, Letters on Occult Meditation. We have to learn how to center our consciousness within that higher center of consciousness we call the soul on the higher mental plane, and that's just the beginning. So always our perception is going to become more and more refined. Keep the faith, it will happen. Persist, and though it is difficult, just persist, because all things come to the student who really knows how to persist in entering this new world of revelation. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn this over to Tuija, who is going to help us with a little triangle meditation. And I'll tell you what, Joe or Michael, do you have Anna Papadakis's email address? Because she had some kind of frustration there, and she couldn't hear. So we've got to try to help her to hear if we can. It's a part of the setup of her machine. I'll if anybody can help her, that would be great. And as a matter of fact, let me just see here. ANA, there it is. Okay, excuse me, I'm just going to take a second here. We've got to help a fellow student here that is in trouble. Well, anyway, I'll send it to you both and see what you can do, and see what you can do for her. I'll give her a heads up on that. Okay, Tuija, would you like to lead us in that meditation on triangles? Am I being heard? Tuija, are you there? Yeah, are you there? Would you
yes,
like to?
I am here, but you are muting me.
I'm going to hear about that later. Okay.
Good morning to everybody. Right.
Okay. Now, do you want your screen to show, or
No,
no?
no,
Okay, then
it's okay. You can put something.
yeah, I'll put something else. Okay,
Right.
okay, that's good. All right, then if you can lead us, yeah.
Okay, yes, this is the short form. Right, so we can start. We take a good position and we breathe frequently, nicely. And we can start from that triangle, which we call the triangle of light between your soul, your head center, and with Master DK. That is what he is asking us to do every morning when we create the triangle between our soul, head center, and Master DK. See that as a solid triangle of light. Through which the energy is pouring in and out. The base of the triangle is touching or is on the mental plane. And the lower point, the apex, is touching the top of your head. We visualize the stream of light as light orange having the golden flavor. Flooding the whole body, permeating every part of our physical equipment. Within this poised state, we hold the consciousness steadily in the mind and not just in the head. Contact the spiritual triad, which you can visualize hovering over the square and radiating the energy of light into this waiting field of active thought. Realizing the fact the energy follows thought. And now, let us call our triangle group members by name with love. And if you have many of them, learn some kind of technique for yourself that you can quickly contact all of your members, triangle members. And we have now about 2 minutes silence. And let us visualize the flow of love and goodwill passing between the members of our triangles. We try to really recognize the quality of that, what is passing the energy. And now we visualize the flow of spiritual light passing between the members of our triangles. And again, try to recognize the quality of illumination. Triangle work belongs to the coming science of invocation. And did you recognize when we were calling our triangle members how living the ethers became? That is giving a lot of teaching for us how the triangle work in practically will work and how needed it is. And now consciously we link our triangle work with the global network of golden triangles. And let us try to have some sense of that vast connectiveness. Recognizing and really realizing how we are under the eye of the greater Shambhalic triangle, under the three Buddhas of activity in Shambhala. As we should become really conscious workers, we may realize and ponder upon this for a while. What does it mean that this greater Trinity above us can use our own triangles in the time of emergencies upon humanity or on the planet? Does it really mean anything for us? And see your triangles with the network of global triangles and with the three Buddhas of activity in Shambhala and their relationship. In this greater realization, being a part of the great work, all us around the planet, one of our responsibility is to keep on invoking, keep that living. So let us sound now the great invocation with deep understanding and visualizing at the same time. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wheels of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And let us visualize that this beautiful golden triangles network is covering the entire planet. We realize the factual nature of this great living spiritual organism and how it constantly substances and underlies the world affairs. We see it as a growing vital reality of such life and potency that it can break through or break up all limiting outer cleavages by the very force of its interior life, eventually externalize itself. We visualize at least 100,000 living triangles functioning within the square-like etheric body of Earth and transmuting it to the triangles. And we see our little tiny blue planet as a sacred planet and humanity redeemed. Thank you.
Okay, friends, and thank you, Tuija, for leading us in that meditation. Now, okay, so that's our work for today. We'll take up the idea of the eye in a couple of weeks, and tonight we'll have our glamour meditation, and we're still dealing with the falsification, the glamour of misrepresenting what you actually perceive, in short, lying. We're dealing with that. Okay, so, and let's see, for the members of the, let's see, what do we have tonight? At 8 o'clock tonight, we have the, no, that's it. That's what we have at 8 o'clock. 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock, okay. I lost the day. And then for the Blue Rose Sisters and Shiva Brothers, or those who might be interested in joining us, just use your YouTube link and at 7 o'clock GMT, we will have the next Shambhala name of Mary. Turns out, there's 24 days between the traditional death date of Mary and the traditional birth date, and the 24 is the number of Shambhalas, so we call them the 24 names, Shambhala names of Mary, plus the name for the month, which has to do with health altogether. All right. So good day, everybody. Good evening, good night, whatever it is for you. Thanks for being here with us. Lots of love, many blessings, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.